Say start, and now the session is also getting recorded and we are live. Okay, so if you have seen the theory video, we have discussed about the reason why we have splitting MVC. And let me just go for a same example which we have taken in servlet. Now, if you remember, I guess Chetu was not there for the example. So we have done this example in servlet. So when we have done with servlet and JSP, and I hope remember that example. It was something with the dosa parlor. Remember Shobi and Vivek? Okay, so let's reopen that example because intentionally I took a big example there because I wanted to take the same example in Spring MVC as well. Okay, so just to give you a quick glimpse because Chetu is new to that example. So what exactly the example is? Okay, just remind me, Shoaib. Just remind me, Shobi, who was the person who was selling the dosa? I mean, who had the dosa parlor? Is it Aditya, Krishna? Oh, Vivek, you are the owner of the dosa parlor? Okay, great. So we have a Vivek dosa parlor here, and so what happens is initially Vivek is the only guy who is making dosa. So he is responsible to make dosa. He is responsible to garnish. I mean, he is responsible to take the request. He is responsible to prepare the dosa, and he is responsible to serve the dosa, right? So everything is done by Vivek here. The thing is, Vivek is finding it difficult to do everything by himself. So what he did, he hired two more people. One is responsible to make dosa, and one is responsible to serve the dosa. I mean, you can say garnish the dosa. Okay, so you got the basic scenario, right, Chetu? So Vivek is a dosa parlor owner, and there is someone who will take the request for the dosa. There is someone who will prepare dosa, and there is someone who will garnish the dosa. Yes, Chetu, you are good with the example, right? Okay, so we have this scenario. Now, what happens? Initially everything was good. They got three people, and three people working on the same. The three people are working on that thing, which is dosa parlor. And let's say if that dosa parlor is getting a huge hit, so because this dosa parlor is opened in the center of an IT company, so let's say we have lots of IT companies there, and it's basically what you say, maybe okay, it's a big area where you have lots of IT companies, and then all these companies they go to Vivek dosa parlor to eat dosa. But what happened, he got lots of success. He thought, okay, let's make this small canteen type of thing into a big restaurant. The moment you say it's a restaurant now, of course, three people not be enough, right? Because now Vivek, instead of making only dosa, he's also making Chinese dishes. He's also making Italian dishes. He's also making some other dishes. Let's say 5 to 6 dishes or what do you say, different type of cuisine is available in his restaurant. Okay, again you can name those. You can say Indian, you can say Chinese, you can say Italian. So different countries have different cuisine. So all these are available in his restaurant. And now the thing is, when you want to okay, let's say, so for every okay, so for every time, I mean, every time a client comes, the problem is if there's only one waiter. Okay, if there's only one waiter, and if okay, we cannot call it as waiter, but then there's someone who is taking your request. The problem is, if you are a client or if you're a customer, if you go to a restaurant, and if in the entire restaurant, which is so big, if you have only one person who will take your order, that will be difficult to manage, right? Because if there's lots of customers, only one waiter or one person to take the request, that will be difficult. So what happens, what Vivek thought, okay, let's do this. For different type of dishes, we'll be having different type of waiters. So there will be one waiter who will be specialized in Chinese. There will be one waiter who will be specialized in in Indian. There will be some waiter who will be specialized in Italian. So when a customer comes, he will go to that particular waiter. Now, once waiter got what you say got the request, he will go to the kitchen and he will say, okay, we got a Indian dish, and there will be a person who will be specialized in making Indian dishes. And then after preparing that dish, it will be going for garnishing, right? So there will be one person who will be garnishing it. So we have one person who is taking the request, one person who is making the dish, and then one person garnishing it. But for different dishes, we have three different people, right? So everyone there with me, right? You're getting what I'm trying to say here. What about you, Chaitu? Because you are new to this example. Okay, Shobi, you're there with me, right? Okay, great. So for different dishes, we have different people, right? Okay, so now let's say, Chetu, you are going to a restaurant now, Vivek's restaurant, and now you want to eat a dosa. So that's an Indian dish, right? So what do you think? Which waiter will come into picture? Because there are different waiters for different dishes, right? So Chetu, which waiter? Yeah, so of course, right, the respective waiter, yeah, for the Indian dishes. Perfect. The problem is, how do you know that which waiter is for Indian dishes? And then how would the waiter knows as a customer what you want to eat? You have just entered in the restaurant, right? And that's where the confusion starts, because we have all these waiters, and if you can imagine these waiters in the Java world, those are controllers, right? So these are the people who will accept your request. But unfortunately, we have lots of customers here, or we have lots of controllers here, not one. So question arises, if you have lots of controllers, and if you are as a customer, when you go to a restaurant, who will be coming for the order? Because they don't know what you want, and you don't know which waiter does what job, right? So what you need is you need a particular person, maybe not a waiter, but then a kind of manager. So there will be a manager there, or maybe a supervisor. You will go there and say, hey, I want to eat a dosa. Then that supervisor will what do you say, he will pass your request to a particular waiter, because he knows about, everything, right? Which waiter is accepting which request. So when you go to a restaurant, you don't interact with the waiters directly. You interact with a particular person, right? That person is responsible to manage all these waiters. So if you are calling all these waiters as controllers, so there's a main person who is also a controller, right? The person who sends you to your particular waiter, he is also a controller, but then he is standing front of those waiters, and that's why he is called as a front waiter. Okay, so we have all the waiters, and then we have a front waiter, and we can call that front waiter as a front controller. Does that make sense? So Vivek, maybe you are the front controller here, who you are responsible to talk to client and try to understand what they want. And based on the request, you will forward that request to a particular waiter. So you are a front controller here. So let's come back to Spring MVC. Now, Spring MVC is a framework which is very awesome framework, first of all, because it makes your web development work damn easy. Trust me, once we complete once we complete 2 to 3 sessions in Spring MVC, uh, you will start loving Spring, because see, when you learned Servlet and JSP for the first time. In fact, when I learned Servlet and JSP for the first time, to be honest, I used to hate servlets. I don't know what was the reason, because of my trainer, maybe because of the way servlet is designed. So I used to hate servlets. But then we don't have a choice, right? Because we don't have a choice because there's only one way to make websites using Java, which was servlets. And then Spring MVC came into picture, and Spring MVC says, hey, don't worry. You can build the same website using Java, but instead of using servlet, we can use Spring MVC. Okay, so Spring MVC, so let me mark my words, Spring MVC is easier than server technology. Let me repeat, Spring MVC is easier than servlet technology, right? But the only problem is, when you want to create a Spring MVC project, it needs lots of configuration. That's the only drawback which you will face in first 2 sessions. It's not just about coding, because you have already learned Servlet and JSP, right? There's nothing more here. If you're thinking, if you want to make a website, Spring MVC provides you more features, that's not the case. Spring MVC provides only those features which were there in servlets. But then it will make your work easy. And just to make your development work easy, you have to do some initial configuration. So you're all there with me, right? You got the gist of it. So the concept is very easy. You will think, okay, this is common sense, but then we have to spend some time on configuration. Okay, so how do we create a Spring MVC project? So let's go step by step. So first of all, to run a Spring MVC, you need a Tomcat server, right? Because we are building a web project now. So till this point, we have created only core projects. Now this time we are going for a web project. Tomcat here. So what I will do is I will click on this no server available because we need a Tomcat. So I will click on this, and I will go to Apache. I will select Tomcat 8.0. We'll click on next, and fortunately, I already have a Tomcat installed in my system. In fact, I have downloaded it. Just click on Browse and search for the place where you have your Tomcat. So I have that on here. So we'll say Tomcat. So let's take this one, this Tomcat here. Click on Open, and everything seems good. Let's click on which is there inside all workspace. Just hold on. I will not go for this one. Okay, I will go for this one. Click on Open, and click on Next. Click on Finish. So as you can see, I have got Tomcat here, and we have to also make sure that this is up and running. So let's say Start. Okay. Yeah, so you can see our Tomcat started. There's no issue with the Tomcat. And now let's go for a project creation of Spring MVC. So what I will do here is I will right click here. I will say New, and let's create a, okay, so we'll not go for this one, which is Spring Startup project, because that is Spring Boot, right? And we are currently working on Spring MVC. So what I will do is I will click on a dynamic web project, and we'll give a project name. We'll give a project name as Spring MVC Demo. Okay, that's our project name. And here we have to select target runtime. Everything is normal, right? We have to select the Servlet API as 3.1. Nothing much here. Click on Next. And click on Next. And OK, so we also need a web XML file. OK, we have to make sure that you click on this Generate Web XML file. You need this file, right? So we click on this and click on Finish. We got our project here. OK, so it is down. It is getting created. OK. We have to change the perspective to the Java EE perspective now, because we are building a web project. And as you can see, if I expand this, we got a Spring MVC demo project. Now this project is, for the name's sake, it is Spring MVC, but then there's nothing called as Spring MVC here, because everything is normal, right? We have normal Java resources, we have web content, everything is normal, right? In fact, it is so normal that we also have the web XML file. If I open that, there's nothing much interesting here. Right? There's nothing interesting here. So what I need here is to understand, to create our first MVC project, we'll use a very simple thing which is called as okay. We'll write a simple code which is addition of 2 numbers. See, the logic is not important here. You already are a good programmer. You know how to build a logic. What is important here is how can you create a Spring MVC project? Okay, so what I will do here is I will expand this SRC, and you can see there is no servlet here, and we are basically going for addition of two numbers. So of course we need XML file, we need a HTML file, a home page basically. I will right click here, I will say new. I want a HTML page, and in this HTML page I will be creating index.html, right? And we'll click on finish, and as you can see we got HTML page here. And here I want to ask for two numbers, right? Because we want to add two numbers. Okay, so let me repeat. Today our main focus would be to configure or to create a Spring MVC project. Okay, we'll not be talking much about Spring MVC today. We'll only focus on the creation of the project, because this takes lots of time. Because if you can understand this, making a Spring MVC project is damn easy. Okay, so what I want to do here is I want to ask a user for two values, right? Because of course, right? Because if you want to add two numbers, we need to ask for two values. So I will use a form tag here. I will say form, and in this form tag, I'll mention action. I want to add two numbers. I will say add. We can set the method, but let's ignore that part for time being. And let's say let's ask the user, hey, enter first number, and here we'll say input type equal to text, and then we'll say name equal to num1. Let's also use a br tag here. So we got our first number. Let's also go for the second number here, which is enter second number, input type equal to text, and the name would be num2. Okay, so we got num1 and num2 here. So we also need a button here. So we'll say input type equal to submit, and that's it. We got our page, right? So if you click on this button, it will call for add. Now question arises, who is responsible to accept this request? Now that's a tricky part. Who is responsible to accept this request? Now, so if you are working on server technology, so if you are basically using server and JSP, so what do you think, Shobi? What we have to create next? Don't think this Spring MVC now. Imagine this is Spring MVC. This is server technology, server and JSP. To accept this request, what we need? Yes, Shobi, you there? Okay, so we have to create a servlet, right? So that's how it works. So when you click on this button, we need a servlet. Now, so what is the procedure of creating a servlet? So this question is for you, Chaitu. What is the procedure for creating a servlet? Okay, so we have to create a class, and that class will be extending a HTTP servlet, right? So yeah, so we have to create a class which extends a class which is HTTP servlet. In that, we have to create a method which is called as public void service, which takes two parameters: HTTP request, HTTP response object. Then we have to do some processing, right? We also have to create a print writer object. Right, Chaitanya? Chaitanya. The object of print writer for printing something on the page. So if you want to say, let's say if you want to print hello world, so we have to get object of print writer, then that's how it works, right? So we have to do all those things, right? And to be honest, Java is a very powerful language. In fact, I'm a big fan of Java. But something like this comes into picture, that's where I lose my control, because it's okay, we have to get a class, but then why you have to extend a class? Then why you have to create a method service? Why can't I use my own method name? See, when you are saying you want to add two numbers, the method name should be add, right? Why the method name should be service? That is what troubles me. So what I will do here is I will say, hey, I don't like servlet anymore. I hate servlet. What I will do is instead of creating a new servlet, and so that we got the option of new servlet, but I will not do that. I will create a simple class. I will name this class as a calc controller, because since it's a controller, so I will name this a calc controller. We can give any name, doesn't matter. And that's it. We'll create a calc. We don't need any method here. That's it. We also need to mention a package. We'll say com.telusko. That's the package name. So my class name here is calculator, and click on finish. You can see we got a simple class, right? There's nothing much here. There's no troubling keywords there. There's no extension HTTP servlet. Everything is so calm here, right? This is the world. This is the world of Java we want to live in, right? Instead of focusing on servlets, why don't we create a Pojo? Now, when I say Pojo, that means a simple class, right? Why can't we create a class which can accept your request? Don't you think this will be amazing if you can create a normal class which can accept your request? So just that's it. Calculator, you got your class. And then since we want to add two numbers, of course, we have to do some processing, right? So to add two numbers, I will simply say public. I will say void. And then, yeah, exactly. It reduces the lots of coding steps. That's the first one. That's a perfect point. It reduces lots of coding, right? You don't have to write much code. The second aspect is if you are writing less lines, that means you are also writing less bugs. It makes your code more. I mean, it makes your code less having less bugs, right? And then it looks cool. You know, I like clean code. I love the concept of clean coding. And that's why if you watch my videos on YouTube, you know, I try to make sure that I use, so for example, for one particular video, I use as less as, oh, there's a disturbance in my voice? Oh, that's weird. How about you, Vivek and Shobhi, is it problem from your side as well? Okay. Okay, so Shobhi is facing no issue. What about you, Vivek? And that's the problem, you know, it's very difficult to detect where the problem lies. Okay, it's breaking at times. Okay, just let me know, Chaito, if you can if you find some difficulty. I will repeat the sentence. Okay, and it's actually very annoying, you know, breaking of voice. Okay, so what I'm saying is, where was I forgot what I was saying. Yeah, so if you write less lines, it will be better because it is easy to debug. It is easy to understand what you're writing, right? So I'll write a less code here. So I will say public void, and I will call this method name as add itself. And then, so let's not do anything else here. See, the idea here is to write a code which can add two numbers, right? But just imagine if we don't want to add two numbers time being, we just want to call this add method, and then I want to print I'm here. Let's go step by step. Okay. So what I want here is, I want when I click on this button submit, the request should go to calc controller, and it should call this add method. It should print I'm here. That's it. This is what I want, right? Because we are saying we hate servlets. Okay, so I'm saying I hate servlet, and then I'm trying to avoid servlet here. But then, can a normal class accept a web request? That's the issue, right? So let's try to run this code, and let's see what happens. If you run this code, and of course, right, everyone knows that this will not work. I will not even ask you, will this code work? Everyone knows that this will not work, but let's try to understand what is the error. That's how you will understand the true power of Spring MVC. And I will not use my default browser for this. I will be using a Firefox because I love Firefox for coding. And I will copy this code, and let me just go to Firefox. Paste. Okay, so you can see it is asking you for two values. Let's enter those two values, 7 and 8. The moment you click on submit query, oh, we got an error, and that was an expected error, right? The error is it is not able to find any resource on the internet which can take your ad as a So it is not able to find anything which can add, which will take add request. So that means it perfectly makes sense to know that there's no one who can accept your request. Okay, so that seems good. But then how do you mention that, hey, we do have a calc method, right? And it does have an add method. How can you link this to? So the idea here is I want to link my HTML request with this add method. Everyone got the question, right? What I want? Okay. Now, how do you make this normal class as a controller, right? Just having a name controller will not make this class as a controller, right? And that's where Spring MVC comes into picture. Spring MVC says you can make a class as a controller. You can make a normal class as a controller just by using an annotation called as add controller. So just mention annotation which is add controller. This will make this class as a controller, right? Now, if you remember, we have worked with what? We have worked with Spring Container, where you have to make all the classes as component. In this case, I'll be using controller. But then question arises. The moment I say control space, you can see we are not able to import the package. So what do you think, Shobi? What's the issue here? Why I'm not able to find the package there? Or anyone for that matter, anyone can answer this. Why I'm not able to find the package? Exactly, right? I don't have a Spring dependencies here. So if you can see in my libraries, if I expand this to Maven dependency, oh, I don't even have a Maven dependency here because, oh, my bad, I'm creating a web project. Oh my God. The problem is if I get a web project, I have to download all the Java files by myself, right? That's not a good way. What I'll be doing is I will be converting this project into a Maven project. So I will right click this. I will say configure into a Maven project. We can do that. We can convert anything into Maven project. So I will use a group ID as from.telusko. That's the artifact ID. Packaging will be this. Click on finish. It will take some time to do that. Okay. So as you can see, we have converted our project into Maven project. It's that easy. Okay. Now there's an issue. We are not able to find this controller. How do we get that? So what I will do here is I will open my POM XML file. And in this, we have to add Spring MVC dependency. So I will go to my POM. And as you can see, we don't have any dependencies here. Oh, where do I mention dependency? I forgot where to put dependencies. Or in which tag? So dependencies tag should be a part of project. Okay, so let's go back here. So in the project, that means before the build, or maybe after the build also we can do that. So after build, inside the project, we have to mention dependencies. And in this dependencies, you have to mention different dependencies. Now the dependencies which I need here is the first one is Spring MVC. I guess that's the only dependency we need. So let me just go to my browser. I will say MVN repository. And in here, I have to search for Spring MVC. Here we go. We got Spring MVC here. Click on this. And we'll be going for a version which is 4.3.7 because that's what I have used in my project, and that works perfectly. These three are still in beta testing. I don't want to take any risk. Let's go till here. We'll go for 4.3.7. And let's copy this and let's paste it here. Now, by doing this, I got all the Spring MVC dependency. And as you can see that in my Maven, it's downloading all these Spring-related dependencies. So we got Spring MVC, we got AOP, we got Beans, we got context, we got core, common logging for log maintenance, for expression, and for web. So we got all this dependency, and most of our work is done now. Because if I go to cal controller, And if I say control space, oh, come on, Devi. Oh, it's taking some time. And we got some error, ignore that. Okay, as you can see, we got a controller, so click on this, and this is the package. We got this package because of the Maven dependencies, or maybe Spring dependencies. Simple, right, everyone? So you can convert, you can make a normal Pojo into a controller just writing added controller on the top, and your job is done. But then still we have an issue. The issue is when you call this method submit. I mean, when you click on this button submit, it will call for add. How would it be doing mapping, right? Yeah, that's right, Chetu. How can we do the mapping there? So the mapping will be done with the help of annotations again. See, even Spring MVC is full of annotations. So we have to use an annotation called as request mapping. So just write request mapping, and inside this bracket you have to mention whenever someone calls for add, call this add. That's it. Whenever calls for add, just call this add. Does it make sense? Okay, perfect. Now, so when I click on this button, it will call this add. Everything seems good, right? Everything seems perfect. Now it should work. So how many of you think it will work? What about you, Shobhi? Do you think it will work? Yeah, okay. So Vivek, you're directly giving the answer. Okay. Okay. So the thing is, Shobhi, you're thinking it will work, right? In fact, it should work because we have done with the mapping as well, right? Okay, let's try. Let me just run this project once again. And if I go back to my browser, and let's use the same request, and if I say enter, it's not able to find this add. So let's try to understand what is happening here. So what is weird thing which is happening here is when you click on this request, so when you click on this submit, remember this thing. Whenever you're working with a web project in Java world, whenever you click on request, the first thing it will search for is web.xml file. This is the default thing it works with. It will search for web.xml file, and web.xml file says, hey, I don't know anything. Can you see that? Web.xml says, I don't know anything. So the thing is, you have to inform your web.xml file that this is not a normal project. This is a Spring project. And inside your Spring project, whenever you get a request, you have to forward that request to a front controller. File is responsible. I mean, this file is somewhere you can mention when you send a request which file it should call. And you can do that with the help of you have to forward the request, right? And you can do that with a servlet and servlet mapping. Now, if you remember, in the servlet technology, whenever you want to call a particular servlet, we used to create two tags, servlet tag and servlet mapping tag. The same thing you have to do here. Now, instead of typing that code, I already have a code with me. I will simply copy that code and let's paste it here. Okay. Now, what do you mean by this? What do you mean by this sentence here? So first of all, let me right-click this and say source format. Okay. Yeah. So can you see that the thing is, whenever you send a request, when I say slash, it means for any request. Doesn't matter what request you're sending. For every request, you have to transfer your request to dispatcher servlet. Now, dispatcher servlet is an inbuilt class in Spring Framework, which simply says, hey, whenever I get a request, it's my responsibility. Okay, when I say my, it is your dispatcher servlet responsibility to call a particular servlet. Example, when you say request, let's say add a request, that request goes to dispatcher servlet first. Dispatcher servlet says, okay, I do have a controller here, and this controller is getting mapped here, so you can see this is getting mapped, so it should print I'm here. So what do you think now? We have done with the configuration, right? We have also mentioned the dispatcher servlet. Now you think it will work? Yes, Chetu. So it should work, right? Everything is mapped now. What about you, Shobi? You think it will work? Okay, he's not there. Okay, so let's try. Okay, Shobi says still not, I guess. Okay, and Chetu says return. Return what? Maybe return some page. That's what I'm saying. It should return something, right? It should return some page. Okay. Yeah, that's the thing, right? We have to return a page, but then time in. Let's say let us get the error. The main concern what I want here is it should print I'm here. At least it should print I'm here. It will be satisfying for us just to if you're getting some output on the console, right? But what if I say it will still not work? Because the problem is when you click on submit, it will send a request for add, and that's perfect. The request will go to add. The request will go to web.xml file, where you're saying for every request you have to call dispatcher servlet. Now, dispatcher servlet is a simple class, right? It's not a Rajnikant to know everything. The problem is the moment you say, hey, dispatcher servlet, you have to search for this add. Dispatcher servlet says, hey, I don't know where I will find this add mapping. Maybe you have a very big project, and inside your big project, how would I know in which package I have to find that? And that's where the problem starts for Spring MVC. Because dispatcher servlet, to work with dispatcher servlet, you have to configure dispatcher servlet. You need to configure it. Question arises, where you have to configure that. So first of all, let's run this code. Let's see what happens. We should be getting some error, right? The point here is, I want to configure the dispatcher servlet. That's my target here. And if I run this code, you can see we are getting an error. Okay, let's see what the error is. The error is, it says it is not able to find. Can you see that? File not found. And the file it is searching for is Telusko-servlet.xml. That's weird, right? It is searching for a file called as Telusko-servlet. Why it is asking for that file? The reason for this is, if I see with this dispatch servlet, we have to configure this, right? And you have to configure that. We have to configure the dispatch servlet in a file called as Telusko-servlet. But why exactly that name? Why only Telusko-servlet.xml file? Okay, so the file name of dispatcher servlet. Okay, so whenever you want to configure dispatcher servlet, the file name we have to use is always something-servlet.xml. This is the default file name. So whenever you want to configure dispatcher servlet, this is the file name where you have to mention so this is the file name you have to mention. So something-servlet.xml. Now what is this something? This something is your servlet name here. Since your servlet name is Telusko here, you have to replace this something with Telusko. If you have a different servlet name, you have to replace that with different names. Simple? Shobi, Chetu? Okay, perfect. So let's remove this thing. And we have to create a XML file now. But where? They have also mentioned the path. You can see it is saying that you have to mention this file with Telusko-servlet.xml in webinf folder. Okay, so webinf is here. Where is that? Okay, it is here, WebINF. And inside my WebINF, I have to create that project. So it's simple. We have to get that file. So I will right click here, others, and okay, this is one way. The another way is I will right click on a project, because if I create that XML file by myself, I have to do lots of configuration by myself, right? I don't want to type all those bean codes. I will say new, and since we are working in STS, oh, now that's an issue because we have changed our perspective. We are not working on STS. Okay, let's change the perspective to STS again. So I want to create a Spring Bean configuration file. Let's click on that, and let's mention this file as Telusko-servlet.xml. Expand your project. I want to put that in a WebINF, so I will go to Web Content. Inside Web Content, I will click on WebINF, and I will click on Next. Now, what are the things we need from here? Now, for sure, we need context everywhere. It doesn't matter whatever project you're making, you have to select context anyhow. Then you have to select, what else we have to select? We have to select MVC. We do have MVC here. And I guess that's it. This too should work. Let's also use beans, because this is where you will have your beans. And anything else here? Nothing? Okay, let's say okay. Let's say next and finish. Okay, so we got context and we got MVC. These two are important, right? And we got that. Okay. But that's it. This is your configuration file, and you can see this is there inside inside Telusko inside WebINF. And let's get back to our Java EE environment. So if I click on this, it will change our perspective to Java EE. So we are back in live. Now, if you are not using STS, you have to take this from somewhere. You have to download this from somewhere. You can copy it from Google or from anywhere. It doesn't matter. You need that thing. Okay. I think everything seems good. The problem is whenever you work with Spring MVC, or whenever you work with Dispatch Servlet also wants to know in which package you have all your classes. We have to mention that, right? In fact, in Spring Core also we have mentioned the base package. So here also we mentioned that. We'll say context, component scan, and in the base package, let's mention com.telusko. Now we have mentioned the base package as well. Everything seems good now. And let's run. So before running, how many of things would work? Chaitu, Shobi, will it work or not? It should work, right? Click on finish. Click on OK. And oh, we are getting an error. Now the error is because it is not able to find issue now. The problem is we have mentioned that for all the requests, you can see that for all the requests, you have to call dispatcher servlet. Now, unfortunately, when I call index.html, it is also a part of slash, right? Yes, I will not go for slash. I will say start.htm. So whenever I request for htm, and let's change this one also. Let's say I'm requesting for add.htm. So whenever you go for add.htm, it should call our controller. Okay, it should call dispatch servlet. Let's do add.htm. Okay, let me repeat what was the problem. The problem is initially we said slash. Slash means it should work with all. I mean, dispatcher servlet will be called for all the requests. I don't want to call dispatcher servlet for index.html. And it was doing that for that as well. And that's where the issue started. Let's run this code now. And there's no issue. Can you see that? There's no issue. We got our page. And let's type something. Let the 78 and 8. Click on submit query. Okay, we got an error. Okay, that makes sense. We got the error. But if I go back to my code, we got I am here. Yeah, it's in the console, right? Printing it in console. What we wanted, right? In a dynamic page. See, we are going step by step, right? First of all, we should be happy that we are able to call we are able to call a controller, right? And this is not a servlet. Can you see that I have written a code without any servlet thing? No HTTP servlet, no service method, no request object, no response object. Everything is so simple. Yeah, we are happy about. Okay, we are happy. Okay, yeah, great. Okay, so we are happy about the output, right? But then there is one issue, as Shobi mentioned. The issue is I don't want on the console, I want on the page, right? How do we do that? That's very easy. What you can do is, see, this is MVC, right? This is MVC. So in MVC, it is always recommended that whenever you want to show output to the user, you should be using a JSP page because it's an MVC, right? So the request will be handled by the controller, and the response will be done on the JSP page. That means I have to. So right click this project and say new. I want a JSP page now, and we'll as result. Click on finish, and in this JSP I will say answer is, and let's print answer is 5. For time being, let's print answer is 5. Let's not talk about anything else. Oh, that's okay. That's a good question. Difference between HTML and JSP page. The main difference is in HTML we can only use HTML tags, nothing else. In JSP we can use HTML tag plus we can write Java code. Yes, that's it has to do something with the static and dynamic pages. HTML, since we cannot write Java code there, we cannot make it dynamic, right? So that's a static page. But in JSP, it has what you say, a capability of writing the Java code also. Example, if you want to do some processing, you can do that in JSP. Okay, example, let's say if you send let's say if you are fetching some data from database, and you are not using servlet, if you're using JSP in this case, and inside your JSP, if you want to write a Java code to connect with database, you can do that. So in your JSP itself, you can write your business logic. That's the one way. The second way is, if you are doing the processing inside this controller and you want to show the output on the JSP page, you can do that, right? Because here, since here we are printing answer is 5, right? But let's say I want to fetch this 5 from the controller. Then we have to write a Java code. We have to say we have to write this tags and say you can fetch the data from the session object, and then you can print. So I can say session dot get attribute. You can do that only in JSP. You cannot do that in HTML. Okay. Welcome, Chetu. Yeah. So when you click on this button, it will go for calc, and from calc, I want to do is I want to print only answer is 5. Okay. Yeah. I just want to print answer is 5. So if I go back to my controller, and as you can see, I'm not calling any JSP. How do we do that? How do you call a JSP? It's actually very simple. What you can do is, instead of saying void, just return. And while you return something, mention the name of the page. The name of the page is result.jsp, and your job is done. It's that simple. Okay. So if you want to mention a JSP page name, just say return string and return the JSP name. Really. Now if you run this code, let's say 78, and let's say 8, doesn't matter what the input is. If I click on submit query, getting output as answer is 5. That means it is calling your JSP page. But then question arises, what is happening behind the scene? Right, everyone? What is happening behind the scene? How can you simply write return JSP, return result.jsp, and it will call that page? So what happens, since we are using Spring MVC, the most powerful class thing in your code is your dispatcher servlet. Dispatcher servlet is the most powerful thing here. So what happens when you send a request? Request is for add.htm. The request will go to the servlet mapping and say, okay, the request is for .htm, and you have to call dispatcher servlet. Dispatcher servlet will call your add method. It will call this add method. Dispatcher servlet will say, okay, I have called the add method, but then give me something in return. So what you're saying, okay, I will return you a string. Now your dispatcher servlet will think, okay, whatever you return, for me, it's a view name. Of course, right? Once you complete the processing, the next thing is always view. So dispatcher servlet thinks, okay, whatever you return now will become a name of the view. Does that make sense? So everything here is managed by dispatcher servlet. What to call, what not to call, everything is managed by dispatcher servlet. Shobhi, try to make sense, right? Okay. Okay, now we are able to go get the entire flow. But still, we are not able to add two values, right? Time being, yes. View will always be a JSP page. Because JSP is basically a view technology. The idea behind JSP is not to process data. The idea behind JSP is to design web pages. But a web page which can also support Java. But nowadays, we got some new view technologies as well. The view technology, which is supported by Spring, there are lots of view technologies. First of all, I will go to Firefox. I will search for Spring view technology. So Spring do support lots of view technology, out of which JSP is the base for all. And if I go to here, okay. So as you can see, Via Spring supports it supports Groovy markup template. It supports velocity, free marker. All these are actually a view technology. But then JSP is basic for all. So if you know JSP, you will understand everything else. It is easier to learn everything. Okay. Yeah. So now what we're doing here is, yeah. So what is the issue? We are not able to add two numbers, right? That's the thing here. So if you want to add two numbers, for sure, when you click on the submit button, the request will go to add.htm. But then behind the scenes, see, even if you are working with this thing, what do you think? We are not using servlet anymore here? I mean, if you look at this code, we are not writing servlet anywhere, right? But do you think we are not using servlet anywhere? What if I say, when you compile this code, so once you compile this code, it will give you a servlet file itself, because you are running this project on Tomcat, and Tomcat Tomcat can run only servlets. So what happens is when you compile this code will be getting converted into servlet itself. So behind the scene, everything is servlet. And that's why we say Spring is a servlet-based technology. Okay, now that means if we are using servlet, so we are also using those two objects, our favorite two objects, which is HTTP servlet request and HTTP servlet response. Now, since I want those two values, right? I just want num1 and num2. So what I can simply do is I can say HTTP servlet request object. I will name this object as request. That's it. It's not compulsory for you to define another object as well. Simply say control space and you got this object. Okay. Since we wanted only one value, since we wanted the input only, so we can directly use this. And in here, we can specify int I, or we'll say int num1 equal to request. I hope you know this thing, right? So we have to say integer present, and we'll say request dot get parameter. We'll mention it is coming from num1. Same thing can be done for num2 as well. So what I will do is I will copy this thing, paste it here, and this will be num2, and this would be num2. Okay, once we got the output, let's say int result, or maybe int answer is equal to num1 plus num2. Now question arises, how do you send this answer from this servlet or from this controller to JSP? Because we are simply returning the JSP, right? So what do you think, Shobi? What can be done here? Okay, so we can use response object. Okay. No, when we use set attribute, we always do that in request object. We don't do that with response object because request object is something which can carry data from server to servlet. Okay. Okay. What we can do here is we can use request object to send the data, or we can also use session, right? So what I can do is if you want to use session, there are two ways of doing it. One, you can say HTTP session session equal to request dot get session. Remember, we can do this. That is the same thing which you used to do in server technology. And then we can say session dot set attribute, and you can set the answer. We can say answer, and we'll set this thing as answer itself. Okay, so we got the session object, and then we are setting the attribute. What we have to do in JSP is it's very simple. Instead of writing 5, let's write $, and this is expression language, right? We can say $, and we can say answer. That's it. Our job is done. Now it may happen that this doesn't support EL, so we'll say is EL ignored false. Again, we have seen this in JSP, how to use EL. Okay, so it should work now. So what we are doing is we are putting data into session. Otherwise, if we don't want to use EL, that's fine. We can also use Java code. We can fetch data from session and we can print it. Even that can be done here. Just to make it simple, I'm using EL, and I think it should work now. Let's run this. And let's say 8 and 7. Click on submit query. Oh, can you see that we got the answer as 15? That's awesome. And the awesome thing is, we are not writing anything called as response object here because we don't need that. I don't want a response object here. So we can skip that part. One more amazing thing is, If you simply need a session object, you can write that in parameter list as well. Now, Spring MVC is so smart, it will give you the session object by itself. You don't have to create this here. So you can skip this line, and even this will work. When you know that you will be using session object, you can write that in the parameter list itself. Spring MVC is smart enough to give you that object. Does this make sense, everyone? Okay. So let me just go for a quick recap what we have done till now. So from the client page, I'm sending a request. So I'm sending a request for submit. The request goes to WebXML file, and WebXML file say, okay, you are sending a request here, which is .htm. So of course, I have to send your request to Dispatch servlet. Then this Dispatch servlet will transfer your request to a controller here, because we are getting mapped with add.htm. This will perform this operation, and it will call your result.jsp. And then you can send data using session object, and you can fetch that in JSP itself. Okay. Now we got a question from Chetu. Didn't get the point about not using response object. It's because when we use it, see, we want to use response object when you want to send some data to the client, right? When you want to write those tags, output, out.println tags by ourselves. I don't want to print anything using response object. I am creating a JSP page here. So when you know that you're creating a JSP page, then why you need a response object? And it's not that we cannot create it. We can also create a response object here. But the thing is, it will not be useful, right? So it's a response RES. We can do that also. Let's say Control-Shift-O. Let me import the package. Yeah. Okay, so that there's no issue. We can do that. But then it is of no use. That's why we are not getting that. So your Spring MVC says whatever objects you need, just mention those objects. Okay. So tell me your experience with a normal Spring project. And you might be thinking, we have to do this every time with the project. No. The project setting will be done only once, right? So you have to do this thing, you have to do this thing only once. Now, whatever features you want to add, just create those HTML pages, just create the controllers, just create JSP pages, and everything will work fine. In fact, there's more to it, but I will not reveal everything now. Something in suspense that we'll do in the next session. Oh, question is, where's the model object? We have not created the model object yet. We'll be doing that in the next session, because we want to send data not in this format. I want to send data in a proper format. So we'll be using model object. In fact, time being, you can imagine this answer as your model object. Okay, we got a question from Chetu. Can we have more than one WebXML file? I don't think so. It will be a conflict, right? It will conflict if you have more than one XML file. More than one WebXML file. But if you put that in a different folder, example, if I put that in meta-inf, I think it should be fine, because it will look for, so when you search for WebXML file, it will look for this file, which is in web-inf. Let's run this. Let's see. Let's try. I never thought about it before, but then if you put that in one folder, it will give you error. In another folder, it should work. So it is working, but then it is of no use. The another WebXML file is of no use here. We had a I didn't get you. In your project, you had, oh, BT. What's that? Okay, that's weird. I've never heard about that before. Oh, background task. Oh, okay. Okay, okay. So you are running it only at one at a time, right? Okay. Never tried that before anyway. Okay. Yeah. So the remaining thing we'll see on Monday. So make sure that you practice this because uh, the understanding the project structure for Spring MVC is very important. Okay, because if you understand the project structure, the remaining thing will be very easy. So do practice this. Do work on this example. Try the same thing. There is a good amount of, I mean, there's a good chances that you will get error in the first attempt. I don't know, is it what happens? But then every time someone try Spring MVC for the first time, they do get the error. So try this. If you get error, don't worry. Just there might be a problem with the spelling mistakes or the dependency problem. So don't worry. Just try it out, and it should work. I would also suggest that if you're doing this for the first time, do exactly the way I'm doing. Once you get the output, then do these different experiments. Okay. Okay, then that's it. Then the remaining thing we'll see on Monday. So have a great weekend, everyone. Yeah. So finally, it's Friday. Yay! Yeah, remember Shobi, we used to talk about TGIF in our batch. Thank God it's Friday. I guess it was I forgot his name. Okay. Anyway, so awesome thing. Okay. That's it. Signing off.